This video is brought to you by Delta Dental.
Hi there, my name is Matt Baxter. I am the CEO of WedgeHR, and welcome to Virtual Intern Experience. We are a one-way or on-demand, or nobody can spell it, but asynchronous video interview tool. So usually, in most cases, it's used as a pre-screening tool. So you have a bunch of applications. People typically would phone screen or in-person interviews and then kind of carry on depending upon the type of role. It's great with any sort of high volume use cases. So we work with everything from call centers to retail to restaurants to fitness. So the core business, we sell that software into typically HR departments that want to use it as part of their hiring process. So I first started my entrepreneurial experience journey mowing a few lawns, and that was nothing sexy. It was literally chubby neighbor kid, push mowed a few lawns, borrowed my dad's, lawnmower, and that's where it started. And really, it wasn't anything sophisticated. There was no like big purpose, grand plan, anything like that. It was literally, I can go mow a lawn and make $30, or I could go work for a fast food chain and take me 5 hours to make the same kind of money. So it just started there, and then started talking to more people, and the landscaping company grew quite a bit. By the time I was a senior in high school, I hired my first full-time employee. So lived in Saline, Ann Arbor area, and then went to Hope College. So I knew I was going to be back and forth between semesters and summer and things like that. So needed to hire somebody to help expand and grow the business. And it seriously just kind of took off from there. So I got approached by a company to buy the lawn care business. And I think I had 3 full-time employees and probably 7 part-time guys. We were doing about 80 accounts, mainly mowing. We had some mulching jobs. We had some spring cleanup, but none of the big projects. And that's why they wanted to buy us. So sold that my sophomore year, going into my junior year at Hope. Wasn't a big tech exit by any means, but it was a cool, experience. Learned a lot of what not to do. But then, had this idea for hiring because I'd hired pretty well, and really it's such a service-driven industry. If you hire great people, you're gonna have a pretty good business. And so felt like there were some challenges in the hiring space, and that's why kind of the adolescent idea for Wedge came about. But kind of in the context of like, how did the entrepreneur experience begin? Like, there wasn't any moment where I was like, man, I want to own my own business, or I want to do any of these things. It more was, this was a need that I started to fill with mowing and fell in love with it. The whole concept of setting your own schedule doesn't exist, right? It's you're working 24/7, but it's kind of on your own terms. And I've kind of just fallen in love with that process and sort of having control and have the opportunity to build great businesses. So that's pretty much where it started. Senior year fall at Hope, I was starting to think about like, hey, I'm going to graduate early. I'm really going to focus on Wedge. Like, that's what I'm going to do. So I got introduced to an alumni from Hope, and it was a 3-minute phone call. And the guy picks up and he says, hey, you've got 3 minutes, 2 minutes to tell me about yourself. So started lawn care. Here's my idea. And he goes, you got 1 minute to tell me about what you're trying to do. So 3-minute phone call, we got done. He's like, all right, thanks. That's all I need. So I hung up the phone. I was kind of like, what the heck was that? 3 days later, he calls me, he goes, so how are you planning on funding this thing? I was like, I think, I might throw 10 or 20 grand at it myself and see where we go. He goes, no, we're not going to do that. He's like, let me write you a check. Let me buy into the company. And so literally mailed me a check for 50 grand. And that's kind of where we got started. So that was like my first unintentional approach to raising capital. Since then, we've raised, just about $6.5 million through predominantly angel investors. So 50 to 200K checks. We've got one fund, Michigan Capital Network and Grand Angels, which is here in Michigan, and a family office as well. I have literally made every mistake you can imagine when it comes to raising funds. Not all capital is good capital. And also, but the flip side of that is there's a lot of people who want to back entrepreneurs. There's a lot of people who never had a chance to be one, but they've had success in other ways. They're like, we want to support you. And there's a lot of folks who are like, I'm betting on you, not really the business. And so you just learn a lot through trial and error. And it's a fascinating space. I think people get enamored with raising money. It's like this big, sexy thing. And you're not growing the business when you're doing that. Yes, it helps. Yes, you can accelerate things. Capital definitely, can speed things up when done effectively. But also, I spend majority of my days talking to investors, updates, how things are going. And that, it's definitely one path that you can go down, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's for everybody. Every day I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not enough for this role. I shouldn't be a CEO. I shouldn't be leading people, right? But yet you just kind of do it. You just kind of figure it out and you're learning on the fly. And I think the more and more you can bring others, or at least tap into others who have either been there, done that, or people who you look up to into that world. That's something I've learned is like, there's kind of the club, the payroll club is kind of what I'm starting to call it. Is like on Monday, you don't know if you have enough money to make payroll. Once you talk to a few other business owners, they're like, been there, done that. And you experience that and you're like, okay, I can get through this. And so, I think the whole question of doubt, like I've learned, I don't think it ever goes away. Some of the most successful people in the world that I know are doing the same thing, just with a few more zeros behind it. And they're experiencing doubt all the time too. And so, I think it's being a CEO, startup founder, executive, it's lonely. Like it really is. And so I think the more you can tap into other people who have been there, that's definitely served me really well. There's been times where I've kind of isolated myself or really didn't think that anybody else had experienced what I have. And I called a buddy or called a friend or called an investor and they're like, man, I've been there. Like, let's talk about it. And I think that's helped me quite a bit. I've never really felt that I was much of an inspiration to others until I've had people reach out and been like, hey, I've been following you from a distance. I want to launch a company. I've got this idea. Can I talk to you about it? And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like there are people out there like watching that, inspired by that. And I'm not doing it for that, but it's when you have those moments, and same thing with our team members, like I get to, at the end of the day, create jobs for other people and hopefully create good jobs, not just from a financial standpoint, but jobs that people love and they're happy and they wake up and they're not miserable. And the fact that as an entrepreneur, you get to do that for others, I think is one of the greatest callings in the world. And, the 360 days you get punched in the face is worth it for the 5 days that you realize you get to inspire other people. So that to me is like, there's nothing better. Ironically, the thing I hate about it is you have that responsibility, right? I've got people that their jobs, their lives, their mortgages, at the end of the day fall on me. Now, there's more to it than just that. And I think, in the twisted, darkness spiraling you can go down, I think you can convince yourself that that is all on you, and it's not. But, there's definitely a piece of that. And also not like I've got one of the most amazing set of investors in the world. Like we have good pressure, kind of the kick you in the butt, like let's go, keep growing. But, I definitely hold a lot of weight of I have taken other people's money. I've pitched a story that I believe in, and it's my responsibility to make sure we succeed. And so there's days that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That 1 step back, I think, feels like it's way more weight than it actually is. And so, I think it's just the weight of success, or, at least hopeful success, I think is definitely pretty heavy. So, carrying that, I try to avoid that as much as possible, but you feel it some days for sure. Some challenges that I've definitely learned a lot from. I've hired friends. I've fired friends. I have one of the best working relationship with my partners, Rob and Patrick, friends before this. But I've also hired friends that didn't work out. So I think some people say never work with your friends. I don't know if that's true, but you also have to build a pretty special relationship with that person that's able to be both friendly and confrontational. And that's a challenge for sure. So the biggest like kind of overarching lesson I've learned when it comes to mistakes usually comes down to like at the people level. And I think majority of the world problems are started and continued with unspoken expectations. If I have a relationship with an employee and I have not laid out my expectations of them, and when they miss those expectations, it's not their responsibility to take that. That's my responsibility to lay out those expectations for them. And I think so many people have expectations of others and they don't share those. And when they fall short, they're upset, and that's not on the person, that's on the leader, right? And so whether it's relationships, whether it's business, whether it's partner, whatever it may be, I think laying out your clear expectations of somebody else and having a discussion about them solves so many problems well before they actually begin. And that's something that I'm definitely spending a lot of time working on. Anybody who wants to think about joining a startup should take a long look in the mirror and ask themselves, am I okay with chaos? I think people love the thought of being okay with chaos. I think people love oh man, like we'll deal with the crazy, the long hours, the whatever. I don't think most people are ready for it. And it's not a bad thing. It's just like a realization, like, are you okay waking up and not knowing what your job is today? But you know you need to work for the company to make the company better. And you don't know what that is. So that's where I've struggled to lead at times, because most people don't want that. People like structure. People like very clear goals, very clear targets. And working for a startup, like, that changes. You might have goals, but that's going to change tomorrow, or that might change today. And so I think if you're interested in working for a startup, ask yourself, like, are you comfortable in totally unknown? And again, I think people get like, even somebody listen to that, it's like, yes, I am. It's like, really? Are you actually like, it's difficult. And I've had challenges with employees and friends who worked with me. It's like, I don't know what we all need to do today. I don't even know what all the goals are, but we just know we need to make the company better. And that's going to look totally different. And so my philosophy with at least our employees is, I'd rather you take 10 swings and 9 of them be wrong, but at least you were doing it, versus sit there and wait for me to explain the one that you have to do when I don't even know what that is, right? So I think it's be comfortable in chaos, be comfortable in unknown. And if you're not okay with that, there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't think startups are for you. If you as a candidate, as an individual, and I'm this way too, I don't want to trust the process to make sure that I get the job, go find somebody to talk to. Send a LinkedIn message, reach out to somebody, call the business owner, get scrappy with it, literally just, and you'd be shocked at how many times you can kind of beat the system. I would say, like, I can't tell you how many investors, clients, people that I found by a random LinkedIn message me just said, hey, would you grab coffee with me? People are like, yeah, of course I would. And I've been shocked by how many people have said yes. So I think if you're trying to avoid the whole typical, my resume got submitted and I have no idea what happened to it, pick up the phone, find a way to get to the person, reach out to them on LinkedIn. There's tons of free tools that you can use to get to somebody to potentially, up your game or find a connection to them. People obsess with having to be perfect. And I think as a business leader who is hired, I would much rather be somebody be authentic and make a mistake than try so hard to be this canned, perfect response. Like, that to me, that's not who you are, and you're not going to have that in normal reality. So that's what I kind of go back to, is just like, be you, and if you make a mistake, that's totally fine. Like, that's going to happen in the workforce, and I don't think employers really care that much about a small little mistake or hiccup or, oh, I missaid this. Just, messed up, but acknowledge it and move on. Ask questions, and don't be afraid to approach your leader or leaders. And can we grab a coffee? Can we grab a beer? Can I take you to lunch? That might seem daunting, but it's amazing. I had he's not a kid anymore, but he was a 17 or 18-year-old, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I live in Detroit. I'm willing to drive to Grand Rapids. Can I come work for you for free? And I'm happy to drive over across the state to meet you for lunch. And I just want to get to know you. So I was like, dude, come over, I'll buy you lunch. We chatted and we hired him, not for free, but we hired him. And that ambition was like awestruck, inspiring. Like, the fact that he was that motivated, it's like, I will hire you no matter how skilled or not skilled you are. So if you're an intern, don't be afraid to go to literally the CEO and be like, can I take you to lunch? Or it's amazing that as a leader, when somebody asks you for advice or just to get to know you, that feels good as a leader. And so if you go do that for others, it's amazing how impactful that can be. And you never know if what happens if the CEO says yes. You have no idea how far that just got you if you have that opportunity. So I would say learn as much as you can, ask as many questions as you can, and don't be afraid to, make an ask to an executive or a leader in your organization to just learn from them. Say yes, 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 until you find something you really enjoy, and then say no, no, no. I think being very careful of the timing of that is important. So for me, I met every person I possibly could. So like when I went to Hope, I kind of had a rule. I wanted to have coffee with at least 2 new people each week. And whether that's talking business, whether that's friendships, whatever, just talk to and meet as many people as you possibly can. Because number one, you never know the network you're going to build. You never know where the idea is going to come from. So just spend as much time as you can interacting with new people, learning from new people. And then I think that's what starts to generate your next big idea, your next thought, your next business that you want to start. Then once you find the thing, you're like, that's what I want to focus on. Start saying no as much as you can. I've fallen trap of saying yes to everything forever. And I've been very distracted at times, consistently. And that's the feedback I get from all my investors is, all right, you're a little distracted. You're bopping around all these different places. And so for me, we're now on a stage where it's like, we now know our niche. We now know our focus. We now know what we're doing and start saying no to everything else. Most people I talk to are like, I'd love to start a business someday. I just don't have a good idea. Most businesses that I know were never like this, let's start this thing. It was more, I was working on this and man, I started to go down this rabbit hole and saw this problem and maybe this person over there is solving it, but not very well. Let's see if we can do it better. There's very few brand new ideas that are out of nowhere, and the ones that are, they're typically not good businesses. Don't be obsessed with finding the next great business and don't start a business just for the sake of it. Be open to solving problems and then discover, is there a product to sell or a solution to offer that you're solving that problem? That's where you can build a great business.